Reacher season 3 episode 5 was much better than episode 4. Probably the best episode of the season. It tried to address some issues that I thought might pop up. We got some good action, and the plot really feels like it's moving forward now. I called episode 4 the weakest of the season and said that it felt like Amazon had their hands on it. I've heard that stuff in the episode was in the book. I still wonder if Amazon emphasized certain components, and even if they didn't, I still think it was a waste of an episode and just not very good overall. Luckily, it bounced back, and this is probably my favorite so far this season. Right away, we get Reacher on his way to help Duffy and Villanueva. I do question the speed that he gets there, just because he seems to do a bit of teleporting this episode with the little time skips we get, and he's kind of bouncing from place to place. But there's a lot of fun here where he saves Duffy, tells her that he can't be the only survivor and be suspicious, which is something I said a couple episodes ago. So I'm glad that the show addressed that point. But he helped Duffy and Villanueva escape, and she left her badge behind, which sets up a lot of the drama for this episode and possibly the next episode, depending on what happens going forward. We end on a cliffhanger, so we don't know yet. I really like his interactions with this guy, Harley, who's just a total scumbag, doesn't care that everyone around him's dying, kind of laughing about throwing the corpses off the cliff. Total trash. The type of hateable character that when he dies, it's going to be so satisfying. And even this episode, we get a little bit of a preview of that from Reacher. There's also a nice little thing here where we find out there's a massive undertow off this cliff, and that Reacher went down like 100 yards away and could have easily just been sucked under and disappeared. And this is where they get rid of bodies for Beck. This season is definitely darker than the first couple overall, but I like the Reacher humor. We get a good bit here where the maid tells him the coffee he's drinking came from a cat's asshole. And I believe that is a real thing. I've heard they use monkey feces in some of it too. Really weird shit. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't care, but fucking gross. And McCabe has sent in a couple of his own guys, and one of them is being crass to the maid about wanting something sweet. So obviously Reacher mashes his face in the table and asks the other guy if he wants something sweet also. And the guy's like, no, I have diabetes. Just some nice dry humor from Reacher that definitely feels less frequent this season than previous ones. And a big part of the plot for this episode is something that you've seen coming probably since episode 1 or 2, that the young kid goes to give the bodyguard that they're holding captive a cigarette. The bodyguard puts the rubbing alcohol in his mouth, and when he goes to light it, he blows it in his face enough to disorient him and then kicks him to death. And it's a brutal fucking death. Obviously, when you have realistic violence like this and you can hear the cracking and the curb stomping on his fucking face is just rough. Duffy finds it and calls Reacher, so he knows it's a serious problem. Obviously, if the bodyguard gets to Beck, they'll know that the whole kidnapping attempt was a setup and fake. So we get a lot of drama this episode. Partially from Reacher having to save Duffy and still keep hidden, partially from him having to deal with this bodyguard problem. And then after this, he has to deal with Beck and his guards looking for a Fed or somebody undercover because there's just too much weird shit happening and he has Duffy's badge. So the pacing of this season has been a little bit strange. That episode 4 felt like a complete waste of time. And this one feels like they're jamming everything in now to get it going. So Reacher told Villanueva to empty the car as much as he could, and they go to flip it and block the road so they can deal with this bodyguard before he gets back to Beck. And this is after he had Duffy go shoot the transformer, and it knocks power out for like half this little town. Pretty brazen, but a pretty cool plan. And another good part of this episode is they all kind of start to tell Duffy that Teresa's dead, she needs to get over it, and she's accepted that she's going to lose her job over this, which is good that it addresses that because obviously this would be a pretty ridiculous thing with an agent dying and all that they've done off the books for her to be able to keep her position. So Reacher hurries back. It turns out that they found out that somebody working for them is an undercover Fed, and he sees Beck and Paulie and Harley seemingly waiting for his arrival. Obviously, he thinks they found the badge that he had from Duffy, but it turns out they found a phone, and it was the maid who was working for the ATF. And this connects the dots for Reacher that the dog couldn't find any drugs because they're moving guns. So solid reveal there. And we find out that Paulie hit the maid and she died. So obviously Reacher's really pissed off. He goes to hit Paulie. Paulie doesn't even fucking move when he hits him in the stomach. And Paulie just bitch smacks him. Like one time he's all disoriented, his head's busted, his face is all fucked up. And Reacher's kind of stunned that he can't believe that he's run into a guy that's so big he can't hurt him. Nice little setup and payoff from his conversation with Richie Beck. So they're throwing away the maid's body. Obviously, Reacher's upset that a Fed died, and just that the maid died in general. And Harley won't shut the fuck up. So Reacher just punches him in the stomach to the point where he pukes right away. And Reacher's like, oh, finally found your off switch. Some more just good dry humor that I really appreciate from this show. And we get a nice little scene of Richie kind of trying to comfort Reacher and say it's not a big deal to be scared. And Reacher says that he's not scared. He just needs to figure him out. So obviously we're going to get this kind of clash of the Titans at some point this season. And with only 3 episodes left, it definitely feels like it's coming sooner rather than later. Beck says that McCabe is calling for Reacher and him. And Reacher lets Duffy know that essentially the big man's calling him. And he says that if his amnesia isn't relevant to me, I'll kill him and then as many as I can. And essentially, he's willing to die to kill this guy. And Amazon was nice enough to squeeze in one more commercial before the last 2 minutes of the episode where Reacher asked Beck, does he get called to McCabe often? And he says no. And then he asked if this is more of just a going in trip instead of in and out. And we end on another cliffhanger. Really good episode overall. Really fit a lot in. We're finally moving the plot forward at a much faster pace, it feels like. I can see why they released 3 episodes at once. Kind of try to get the setup all out of the way. Episode 4 I still think was a waste of time, but I think from here on out it's going to be pretty breakneck speed of just go, go, go. So I really dug this one. Curious to see what they do next episode, if they'll have McCabe recognize him or not. I believe he only met Reacher the night that he got shot in the face, so I suspect that he won't recognize him. But if he does, we'll probably get a pretty sweet action scene. I thought this episode was also pretty brutal that they killed the young agent and the maid, and I'm glad we got some of the humor back. I'm going to leave it there for this one. Obviously, Reacher's not a show that you need to go crazy in depth with discussing, but it's a fun show to talk about. Always nice to get back to the kind of the old school fun, just simple plot, a lot of violence, big dudes killing shit and beating up bad guys. If you've seen the episode, let me know what you think. I try to respond to the comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.